Django Channels. This is what we're going to use. It's a great package. We're going to use it inside our Django application, and we're going to use it to handle our real-time WebSocket communication. And we're going to fly through it. If you want more information on how Django Channels works, come to the docs, read through it, go through the tutorial, great tutorial, and we're going to get to it. There's another project that we're going to need as well. Get rid of that now. It's a great little package. It doesn't have many stars. We'll go to the web, Django Channels, JWT Auth Middleware. Only got 12 stars, but it's fantastic. I've used it in this project, and it works extremely well for what we need. So shout out to Joshua Hashimoto, legend. So we're going to install a few packages here. We need to activate our virtual environment. Install channels, Daphne, channels Redis. We're going to need a Redis instance, which we're gonna run. I'm going to set that up, and also the Django Channels JWT Auth Middleware. Install all of those. And our server is running. It's all good. We might need to rerun our server, so we'll close it down and we'll just hit rerun again. Now we can get out of our virtual environment here, and we should be clear that. Now we need to open up our core. We'll close our app and we'll just deal with our API for now. Inside of our core settings, we need to add a few things. We need to add Daphne, and there's something I forgot to do, is import our REST framework in our installed apps. Oh, not good. I'm pretty sure that needs to be there, but we'll just put it there now. Nothing broke, so looks like it works anyway. Maybe it was imported here. No idea. Anyway, we'll just pretend that didn't happen. We need to set some channels configuration. So channels requires its own channels. And that should be all we need there. We also need to configure Daphne. So this is for our web server that we're going to update in a moment. So in our normal application runs this WSGI, which is a synchronous web server, which is what is used by default. Now Django has support for an asynchronous web server, which allows you to do some more interesting things, and using channels is one of them. So we need to tell our application to use this asynchronous web application instead. It's all in the docs. As I said, we're not gonna explain every little detail. We're just gonna fly through, and that should be all that we need for our setting. Actually, one more thing, because we're gonna upload thumbnails in a second. We need to set some thumbnail-related media root stuff. So that, and then we're going to head over to our ASGI file. There's a bunch of things we need here. So this application, we're going to replace that. We need to import. I'm going to rename this. And we're going to save that. And we're just going to stop here for a second because we have replaced our WSGI with our asynchronous web server instead. Now there's something we need to come over here, remove that. Now we'll try and run this again. What's going on here? Chat routing. That's because we try to import something we have not yet created. So I'll just get rid of this. Get rid of that. And then rerun. What the fuck? Why is that? I think I made a spelling mistake. Yep. This should not be capitalized. Ugh. Alright. Now, try that again. No. Spelled it wrong altogether. Auth middleware stack. Try that again. There we go. Okay. Finally. Oh my god. Alright, so something important to note here. See this starting ASGI Daphne server. So if we scroll up, just to the up, we can see starting development server at this address. And then when we come down here, it's now saying starting ASGI Daphne version. That's because the Daphne package or the Daphne web server is now, we've configured it in such a way that when we run server, Daphne hijacks this and it runs something different. So if you see this working here, starting ASGI Daphne version, then it's all working. We're all good. And now we can continue and we can actually implement our WebSocket protocol. Okay, now when we save this, we're going to get a bunch of errors because this chat.routing, there's a file that we're going to create in here. So we're going to create that straight away. Routing. So this consumers file, we need to create that as well. That's going to contain, similar to in Django how we have our views and then we wrap up our functionality in a view, and then it has certain methods that can get called. and then we provide a path, and then we say as view, our view as view. Well, routes and consumers are similar to URLs and views. So notice some similarities here. So instead of URL patterns, we're going to go WebSocket URL patterns. And we're only going to have one because we only have one endpoint for our WebSocket. And then once that's open, all of our communication will take place over that. And you want to create a chat consumer. As I said, not going to cover in detail how all this stuff works. That's why I pointed you towards the documentation. It's all in there. And I find it's easier to just see someone fly through it anyway. And then you see how it actually works. And then when you read the documentation after, you go, I remember that. Okay. And so instead of as view, which we would do here, I'm going to say as ASGI, which is where some of the similarities come from. Now we're going to create another file, a consumer, or consumers. Now this is sort of like our view. So as I said. So we're going to inherit from this class here, make our chat consumer. And this provides us some functions which we're going to override. So this is going to be called when we attempt to connect, when we attempt to make a connection, a WebSocket connection. And we need to call self.accept in order to accept any connection. If you don't call this, then no connection will be accepted at all. It'll just be, it'll try and then go, couldn't connect, whatever. And then we want to disconnect. And we'll pass for now. We're going to come back to these. Silly spelling mistakes. Sweet. Okay. Now it's working again. Now, because we wrapped our WebSocket in this JWT Auth middleware stack, this is what's going to allow us to authenticate really, really easily. So when we connect, or when we make a WebSocket connection, we're going to pass our token instead of putting it in the header, but we're not going to do that. We're going to just pass it as a query parameter, as a token equals, and then the token. We're going to pass that in our request to establish our WebSocket connection. And then if it's there and it's present, then this middleware here, it will provide us inside our consumer. It'll do all of this for us. It's really, really easy. A user. And we can extract that user by just saying user.self.scope and user. This user will exist if we're authenticated, and it won't, it'll give us a user regardless. If the user is authenticated, then we can guard against not being authenticated, and we can say user.isAuthenticated. And if a user is not authenticated, we're just going to return. We're not going to accept the request at all. We're just going to say no, not happening. Not happening, bruh. Not on my watch, And that's all we need to do for now. So we'll revisit this. There's a lot more to do in this consumer, but for now we'll just make a connection. So we'll close our API and we'll open up our app again, and our web server is running. It's all good. So we're going to go into our core. Our core and our global. So inside of our use global, this is where we're going to need to update all of our global state, and our WebSocket is going to receive data, and we want it to update its global state automatically, like straight away. So in here is where we're going to keep our WebSocket in here, and we're going to create another section. So I'm going to keep it all nice and organized with our sections. I'll call this one our WebSocket. Make sure we have that. we're going to need to close it as well. So when we connect, first thing we're going to need to do is to fetch our tokens, which we haven't stashed yet, but we will go back and stash them now. So tokens equals await secure.get tokens. And we're just going to utils.log, and we're going to call this our tokens in capitals so we can easily recognize it, and then our tokens. Now we need to call this socket connect function once we're logged in. So where can we put that? We're going to put it inside of our home, because our home screen is, we're only going to be navigated here, or we're going to be navigated here once we're logged in. So once that happens, we want to run a use effect in here. And we need to grab those. We need to go const socket connect equals use global. Make sure it's installed. Make sure it's imported there. State equal state arrow state dot socket connect. Also, we want socket disconnect or socket close as well. When this is run for the first time, we want to go socket connect, and then we want to return a function that is going to be called when this component closes. And that's how we accomplish that. Let's save that. And yeah, we need to install, we need to import use effect, make sure it's there. Save that. Yep. And tokens are undefined because we don't actually have any tokens yet. And this was only visible in this one. Actually, you know what? So we can figure out where this log comes from, we're going to add one thing to our utils while we're here. We're going to import platform, and then whenever we log something at all, we're going to display whether it's coming from iOS or whether it's coming from somewhere else. Or whether it's coming from iOS or Android. We're just going to print the OS. So we're just going to pop that in there, save that, and then when it reruns, see, now we've got iOS tokens, iOS undefined. So this is going to help us later when we want to know where did it, you know, because we're printing our output from both simulators in the one terminal, we need to know which came from where. So we hadn't needed that until now, but now we will. So that we can get rid of that, and we need to save our we need to actually save our token. So when we log in here, we want to pass pass the credentials, the user. Now we also want to pass the token. Again, we didn't need that before, but now we do. Tokens, and then we're not just going to stash the credentials, we're also going to stash the tokens. And then by the time the user logs in and navigates, the token's are already going to be there. So we're going to set the tokens, and nothing else needs to change. We're going to need to add that here as well, I think. In our initialize, if we get a response, which is going to be down here, we're going to get our tokens, and then we're going to stash them here as well. We've got to make sure we do that too. Otherwise, we've got to make sure we do it in both because we're logging in here, but in a slightly different way. So we just need to make sure we stash our tokens, and we don't need to worry about the credentials because we've already got the credentials here. But we do need to replace the token because the token is most likely expired. Cool. And now we should be able to, yep, sweet. So now when we refresh, we'll refresh again. Refreshing. Sweet. So now our tokens are there. We're able to grab our tokens from the secured cache. Now, so we have them here. So we can continue on now. And we want to create a socket. It's pretty easy. Interpolate a string. we're going to have to figure out what our address is the way that we did before in our API, this address here. So what we're going to do, we're going to export our address, and then when we come in here, we're going to use that address here. So if we're, depending on which simulator we're in, we need a different address for that. And then we go to chat, which was our routing. Routing, our /chat. This is where all of our WebSocket consumers are going to be. Well, we only have one. This is where our WebSocket consumer is going to be. So we need to hit that. And remember, this is not HTTP. This is a different protocol. And we need to add as a query parameter, like we said, our token, our access token, not our fresh token. And then we need to interpolate that. And we can go tokens dot token access, not token. Token dot access. And then we need to set up some callbacks. So we go socket dot. So when a socket is open or successfully open, we're gonna so we can see what's happening, and we can get rid of the tokens now because we confirmed that worked. So on open, on message, on error, and on close. And then we need to set the state. Grab this. Socket is socket. So this socket becomes this socket. And then we save that. We need to change these names. Save that. And then we should go on address. Yeah, we've got to import this address here. So sweet, because we exported it, so now it knows where what's going on. So on error, on close. So that means it tried to connect and it failed instantly. So let's refresh that again. So we're sending it, it's all good. It's receiving, no, that's signing in, it's not receiving anything. So we're gonna log out in our consumer, get rid of these, inside our consumer, user is authenticated. We're going to, let's print out our user. If it's an anonymous user, that means that it's not authenticating. So we save that and we can refresh. Let's see what we get here. Nothing. So it doesn't seem to be hitting it at all. So maybe we have an error somewhere. We may very well. Why? Why isn't that working? Let's try again. An error on close. Well, what is the error? Okay. On error. E. Let's print out E. The error dot message. Print that out. Network error. Close that. Let's try and rerun. Okay, some sort of DNS issue that I've never seen before. How fun. So to get around that, I think what we might be able to do is go to our API, and then instead of localhost, we'll just use 127.0.0.1 instead. We'll try that. And then we're going to have to add that to our settings, our allowed hosts. Sweet. And then we'll try again. Still didn't work. Okay, that didn't help at all. rerun the app altogether. Take a minute or two. Okay, refresh. Something happened to Android there, I'm not sure what. There we go. And I've never seen this error before, so I'm not sure what it must be. Let's try again. Ah, that's why. What an annoying thing. Okay, so to solve that, we're going to remove HTTP from the address itself. Ugh, can't believe I didn't catch that. And then I'm going to put this back to localhost. And then I'm going to come back to settings and change this back to localhost. Sorry about this. Should have caught this earlier. Save that. Now try again. Okay, on open. It looks like we're getting somewhere. But we had an error here. Exception inside application. Nixie. Okay, that worked. Okay. Now let's remove that. Let's refresh this. Okay. That's fine. Got that sorted. We've got this working. Now in our consumer, printing our user, we print is authenticated. And then we will try again. On open, on close. Now we're getting an error here. Is authenticated equals true. So when I accept, it doesn't like that. Why is that? Connect call failed. Ah, that's why. So the reason why this failed is because we need a, this gave it away. We need to set up our Redis server. So Mac Redis, install Redis on Mac OS. It's pretty easy. Brew install Redis. So yeah, we need to set up a Redis server, so we'll just close that for now. Actually, we need a new tab here. Go back to the root. We need to install our Redis server. That's why. Yeah, foolish me. We're not actually using it yet, but it expects it to be there. That's why it's complaining. Sweet. Yep. So I already had it, so I wasn't worried about that. Now we want to add something to our make file. Redis. But when we run Redis, we just want to be able to call this because we need to have this running in the background alongside our server. So I'm going to run our server here. This works with Redis when we're using Django Channels, and we'll see exactly why in the future. But all we need to do is we need to go Redis-server, and that's all we need to do. Save that, and we go back to a different open terminal, and then we can just go make Redis. And now we have a Redis server running. And we're going to need to keep this open just like we have our server open, where they both need to be running. Now, if you're more familiar with Redis, you can run this in the background so you don't have a logout here. But while we're testing, we're gonna we're going to see what it displays, because whenever it adds something, removes something, does any sort of operation, we should be able to see that here. And we'll go back to our normal server here and rerun again. It's open and it's not closing. Sweet. So now we've got here Nick, true, WebSocket, yeah. So you can see you got HTTP requests and then you've got WebSocket requests, all being displayed in the same window. Okay, that was painful. Now we're going to continue on. Now the reason we needed Redis is because when we connect, when we accept, we want to add ourselves to a group. Now, a group is a concept in Django Channels where we can create a group and let's just say 2 friends in a chat. We can create a group and we can add both of those friends to the one chat, or 3 or 4 or as many people as we want. And whenever I broadcast a message to that group, everyone who is connected with the group is going to receive it. The way we're going to do this is that every user is going to be attached to a group that group's name is going to be just the username of that group. That group's name is just going to be the username of that specific user. And the reason why we're going to do this is because let's just say that I'm logged in on my phone, but I'm also logged in on a tab on my computer. I'm also logged in at work. I'm also logged in somewhere else. I want all of these to be logged into the one group. I want all of these to be attached to the one group. And so when someone sends me a message, broadcasts a message to me, they're going to broadcast it to my group, and then every single one of my, open devices or open accounts at the time is going to receive the message simultaneously. And so that's why we're going to use this concept. And it's all in the documentation. It recommends you use groups even when you don't necessarily need to do that for exactly this reason, if you're logged in on multiple devices. So we're going to continue on and we're going to grab the username of the user, and we're going to use that as the group. And we're just going to keep it handy here. So this function, this connect function, is running asynchronously, and we want to call a synchronous function. And there's some annoyances when it comes to that. We need to bridge asynchronous to synchronous. And the way that we do this, we call this function, which we're going to need to import. Import that. And then when we want to add a user to a group from the connect, we're going to need to do this in an annoying way. Channel layer. Okay, so every time you log in, you have a unique channel name. And so we want to add this unique channel name to a group with this username. And that's how we're going to achieve what we just mentioned before. And then I'll just make it clear. Cool. So that's how we're connecting, and this is just some of the setup that we need to do. We won't really need to worry about this too much because we're going to set up a few functions that we're just going to be able to call whenever we want to do something. Whenever we receive something, it's going to call a certain function, and whenever we're going to send or broadcast to an entire group, we're going to have a function that does that, and we're going to hide all this nonsense. And then when we disconnect, we're going to remove our channel name from that group. And so we can just copy this. And then instead of group add, it'll be group discard. And that's all we need to do to add ourselves to a group. Now, we need to set up a way to actually receive events from the app. So the app is going to push events to the server, and the server is going to have the ability to push events to the app as well. It's a bidirectional communication. That's why we're using this, whereas as opposed to HTTP requests where we actually have to reach out and ask the server for something. The server can't go, oh, I've got something for you, and then send it to you. We have to reach out first. We don't want that. This is how we're getting around. And so we're going to create a little section here. I'm going to call it handle requests. And there's going to be lots of different requests that come from the server. There's going to be lots of requests that come from the app. And this function, which we are overriding, is just called receive. And it receives text data. Remember before I said that we can't send a blob when we want to send a thumbnail or anything like that. We can only send like data, like essentially like character, like the text data. And it's always going to be JSON encoded string essentially, and then we're going to be able to take that JSON encoded string and we're going to be able to turn it back into a dictionary or a Python dictionary. And we're going to print this out in a sort of pretty way. And then this is going to print it out nicely for us. And we're going to need to import JSON. And that's all we need to do now to receive data.